Welcome to Flavor of the Month, our monthly series here in Halo Halo Productions, where we interview some of the creatives behind our favorite short films. We ask about the inspirations, challenges, and secrets, what it takes to create a beautiful indie short. I'm Mick, one of the members of Halo Halo, and this month, for December 2023, we are featuring the 2019 short film Parabola. Parabola is a 15.5-minute drama about a Japanese-American single mother who struggles to reconcile with her father, Musashi, a notorious Yakuza enforcer, following his release from prison. This film features Mayumi Yoshida playing the mother and Hiro Kanagawa playing the father. And I chose this film specifically for December because there's a section in the film where there's snow, and it always reminds me of this film every time it snows here in Vancouver. And later in the interview, we're probably going to talk about why that is something that is very memorable. But before we get into that, um, we have a bunch of people here today. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Lee Shorten, the writer and director of the film.
I'm Brittany Lum-Cho. I'm one of the producers.
Hi, I'm Planta, catering producer too.
Hi, I'm Phoebe Miu. I played Izanami.
I'm Iya Yujuico. I was head of makeup and hair.
I'm Angel Lynne. I did stills and behind the scenes photos.
And you designed the tattoos.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I drew the tattoos.
Very
That was a thing that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So welcome everybody. I wanted to start the interview here talking about a bit about how the film started. Where did the idea come from even? And maybe tell us a little bit more about what the film is about.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I grew up watching a lot of Irish and Italian gangster films, like every fucking film bro dude ever, I guess. And then, I'd see a lot of Asian gangster films too, but when they're in the West, when they're American, the Asian characters are always so one-dimensional and just, evil and whatever. So I just really wanted to kind of explore, a gangster film from an Asian perspective that actually centered the Asian characters and fleshed them out and made them a little bit more three-dimensional than maybe we've seen them typically in the West.
So the whole film begins with after the Asian gangster is released from prison. I mean, you could always look at a character from different perspectives. What made you choose that kind of story arc for Musashi, where he is released from prison rather than, say, looking at other parts of his life?
I think two things is regret, I think, is something we all think about, right? About no matter what age you are, except maybe if you're 6 years old or something. But I think you think about your regrets and the things you wish you would have, could have, should have, or paths less traveled or whatever. So I think that's very universal. And then, families are always complicated, and I think we all have, unless you're really lucky, I think we all have complicated relationships with our parents. So it's something I think about a lot, especially being adopted. And so it was just kind of those two things were on my mind. So it made sense to tell the story about an older person reflecting rather than, a younger person.
I know in the film there are a couple elements that I've always wanted to ask you about. I never got to ask you when you were making the film. One of it was, I think, when Musashi's sitting down on the couch, if I remember right, he's reading a book like the King Lear book. Was that intentional? Because the story of the King Lear is also about an aging king who's kind of, passing off the torch to his children, which almost feels synonymous to this film.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was intentional, right? Someone else back me up.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah. Man, this is years ago. All right, I'm pretty sure it was, because we even shot an insert of it and everything, which we didn't end up using. It was the only insert we shot for the whole film, but then we just didn't use it. So.
And then looking into Izanami's character, who shows up in the film as almost, is she kind of like a hitman or hit person for the gangster? What is your kind of relationship to the whole gang? And there's a bit also in the bar where she drops off this crane. Is there kind of symbolism between all of that and how that relates to Musashi?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a big fan of ambiguous films, because to me, a lot of the classic films, the films that have endured or the films that I like, it's so much, and things that I personally enjoy is the conversation you have after the film. Inception was so much about wow, did the top fall over or not at the end? Or like, were we actually incepting Cillian Murphy's character, or were we incepting DiCaprio's character to like let go of everything? And Blade Runner, is Deckard a replicant? And The Thing, like, is Giles or Kurt Russell's character McCready, either of them the Thing at the end? And so it was like a bit of ambiguity. So with our film, I wanted Izanami, like, you could read it as she's a hitman, or you could read it as like she's sort of like just the embodiment of death, and it's just he's come to the end of his life, and it's not necessarily that she's like an actual human being hitman. She's just like a manifestation of fate or whatever. So
Yeah, I really love that about her, because like I really love that symbol, because it was like she wasn't a hitman. She was kind of like a manifestation of time, like being fleeting. What was that thing in Inception? The totem.
yeah.
Yeah, of like just symbolizing wherever she showed up. It was like a very stark reminder that your time was limited, and it was kind of what made them make the most of it as best they could when Hiro had like very little time left. That was cool. That was really cool.
I mean, to go off of that, that's why, like, at the beginning, if you pay close enough attention, you'll actually see her walk through with all of the Yakuzas in the beginning opening scene.
Oh,
Forgot about that.
I
Yeah.
did not even.
Yeah, I did too.
It's a real blink and you'll miss it moment, but
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
there for the entire film.
So Phoebe, you played Izanami as a character, and you did mention a little bit about how the character plays a little bit as a specter or a symbol of death as well. When you were performing that on set, was that kind of your motivation behind the character? 'Cause I remember watching the film; she's very like mysterious in that way too. So, what was the process for you?
I think in looking her up about, the Izanami is the name of the goddess of death in Japan, and looking her up, I think there was like I was almost gonna fall into the trap of playing her quite stoic and grim. But that scene with Mayumi at the bar, I think that was like a really nice opportunity for me to have a bit more empathy, so that it wasn't so much like I'm coming for blood, as opposed to, hey, like I don't necessarily want to do this. This is just my job. This is the way that life goes, and this is a reminder for you.
Right.
Just kind of, I don't know, hopefully channeling like a little bit less of the darkness of death, and just more so the beauty of life and the limited time that we have. Does that make sense, Lee?
No, yeah, totally. And it's like, it's like, I'm glad, because it's like what we wanted, right? It's because you're right, it is a trap to be just like grim and dark, and I don't think it's like that, especially, in my head, like if I was deaf, how many people are you theoretically like reaping a day? Like, it's not really about that. It's just about, life.
Death, I mean, you got to find joy in your job too. Like, if you're gonna go around just making everybody cry, like, that's not fun for you. Just so much negativity. But there we definitely got to play a bit of the grim parts of that in that final scene with Hiro. But even then, I remember Lee giving like a really, really powerful note about how it was almost like they were old friends. Yeah, sharing the space together one last time, and that was really nice. Yeah, and I hope that final moment there conveyed that. I think there was a cool, and the way that set was like done too, with the little bit of like smoke and the haze too. There was a cool energy between me and Hiro for those couple seconds.
Cool. One of the things about Izanami as well, and I think a lot of the characters, is the tattoos that they have there. For people who don't know, most of those tattoos don't actually exist in the actor's arms on an everyday basis. That was just something made for the film, and we're lucky enough.
It did for Phoebe for a few days.
Oh, guys, I capitalized on those tattoos big time. I made sure I was like, yeah, is there a way for them to stay on so I can go out this weekend, go to the bar with my big tattoo and just show it off? It worked. It
You
I
get a
mean,
really,
lot
you
of
look sick.
compliments.
I,
Yeah.
I thought you looked
Yeah.
sick. So yeah.
yeah, it inspired me. But yeah, Iya and Angel crushed it. Like Iya designed the whole, Angel designed the whole piece, and Iya put it on in I think three chunks?
Yeah, something like I don't even remember. I think we tried to get it on as seamlessly as possible. I feel like if I were to do that now, I would do it differently. But at the time, I think we did the best we could. I just felt bad when I told you you couldn't drink. It's like, oh, but you
Yeah.
can't. Because if you had because if she had drank alcohol, she might have sweat through and broken down the tattoo, and we still needed her. We had her on the first day and the last day. I'm like, you please don't drink. So,
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I
Wow.
didn't know that either.
Yeah,
yeah,
Thank-
we were like,
abstain.
Oh, thanks for taking one for the team. Appreciate it.
Worth it.
So with the tattoo, Angel and Iya, as the people who did create the tattoo and get it on, was there any inspiration or what was the thought process as you were creating that from, as I understand, you guys created it from scratch, so.
I think from what I remember, also now I'm like racking my brain. Lee gave us symbols we needed to have. So like the koi, and then there was the dragon. So and then I just gave it to, so we got Angel to do them, and then Angel did like the heavy lifting. I kind of just judged it so that it would just so that it would make sense on a 3D plane versus flat. But inspiration, so then also looking up reference photos for other Yakuza tattoos and the sleeves and all of that was part of it. And yeah, we just married the ideas together as best we could. And yeah, because that, like, if again, like I said, if I were to do it again, I would do it very differently now that I've had more time to work with fake tattoos on different sets. But yeah, it was a good merging. Good first time we asked Angel to illustrate anything. So also learning how to work with her was a good experience.
It was really daunting because I just had somebody sent me a Google Drive folder full of inspo pictures, and there was a lot of them. And I'm like, okay, so I have to kind of average them out to create something that would fit on an arm. And I've never thought about how to make 2D into 3D. So I was looking at like skin maps of like 3D models, like flattened out to see what shape it needs to be. And it was hard. And like every draft that I sent to Iya, she's like, can you make it noodlier? Just more noodly than I was trying to. I'm like, okay, but if I make it too noodly, it might go off the arm. Yeah, it was a lot of finessing.
How long did that whole process take, even from, say, let's say from the creation to figuring out how to even apply it? Because I remember being one of the test subjects for it, and all I could think about was like, this took a lot of thinking.
When did we? It was
I don't
from
remember.
from whenever Lee, because Lee had asked me November the year before, and I was putting it like if I would be interested in doing the tattoos, and I was like, okay, well, push it, because we hadn't officially been chosen yet, I think, for Crazy Eights. So, I think once we were picked, then it was kind of crunch time to try to figure it out. So that what's that, like a month or something?
I remember
to-
there was like a week where I was doing revisions every hour on the hour.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sorry.
and then no, you know, would not trade the experience, but definitely because even the printing was something I didn't have access to. I had to go to a print shop that I learned about that would do it, and but the thing was they had like a $15 minimum for using your own paper because I had to use a specific paper, and I basically sat there with my computer tweaking, and then just because they were nice enough to let me sit there and like finish up the $15 or however much it cost, like little by little, just sitting at like editing little by little, like, okay, what about this page? So we would try it. Like they were really nice there. Like there was no place to sit. So I was just like on the ground by the front desk. I'm like, okay, I send you this. And then yeah, so that was also learning how to get that stuff done without the Yeah, shout out to Willen for letting us try his printer, but it didn't work. I had to go somewhere else.
Awesome.
This whole thing is like what I love so much, right? Because it's like directors or actors get so much credit and whatever, but it's like one thing you're like, we just need a tattoo on this person. Then it's like across 3 or 4 departments. It takes like weeks of work and back and forth with like talented crew doing what they do best, like especially like, and then bringing back iterations to like the director or whatever. I don't think everyone realizes that for every little thing in your script or every little thing in your film, often there is like so much work behind the scenes from various departments that go into making it the way that it is. Not saying this is a good film or anything, but like in good films, all those details matter, but like it might be on the screen for like 1 fucking second. If it's not good, it really drags everything down. But so much work from the crew goes into every little moment of a film.
Absolutely. I think that like makeup, props as well, like in art, I feel like actors, for me, it was just like the sheet that went on. It went on and it sat there for 3 days. I just had to keep it dry. And
And not drink.
little do you know, there's like Angel working with the Google Drive, with someone putting together a folder with assets, inspo. Angel doing render after render after render, and then Iya trying a printer, like all this stuff that happens before the sheet goes on. And to me, it's just like, that's 1 hour. And then there's the props too. I think about the sets I've worked on where like people are handling props, and these props take time to make. And some actors, it's like you don't realize the time that it took because it's just there and you think it's always been there. And if you're careless, like there are people that are just careless that'll knock it over or throw it around. And it's like, that may have been the thing that took like 3 weeks to make and like several iterations. And yeah, like you said, those things just go undervalued and like undernoticed.
So speaking of that and the time it takes to do things, this film was created for Crazy Eight's First, which is a festival of sorts here in Vancouver where you're asked to kind of shoot and edit it in 8 days, if I understand correctly.
Yes, you get 3 days of shooting, but the whole thing, post, like shooting to post to like lock to everything, is 8 days.
Right, but you have as much as a month to prepare for the film before you shoot it. Brittany and Phil, you two kind of produced this film for Lee. How was that experience like, given that you only really had 8 days to plan this, and the film has a lot of locations and a lot of things going for it? So how did you pull it off?
I mean, it was really intense. I think at one point I looked it up and we had like 11 different locations and like 6 or 8 company moves over those 3 days. So it was a lot to pack in, but it was such a great project and we had such a good team. So I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Yeah, it was definitely because I had done Crazy Eights, I believe the year before, with most of the same team. That was in one location pretty much, just like almost like a studio feel, and about 92 people, cast and crew. And then this was about almost the same size, but moving many people. I remember the John, who was helping with the locations, you said, "Oh, I didn't realize they're bringing this much crew to this, tiny little Vancouver special in Surrey." But you just had to make it work in terms of logistics. It was definitely ambitious though, because we would go from house to house to another city, and we lost the location because of the Chinatown parade. So we had to move everything to Yaletown, which is much harder for things like parking or unloading. So it was definitely like very challenging, but thankfully the crew was, and we had a snowstorm. Thankfully the crew was pretty, and the cast were pretty down to play. So it worked out in the end.
Yeah. Let's know more about that snowstorm, because I think what people don't realize is the amount of what happened during that day, and I guess those 2 days, and how it's still, to me, I've heard about it, I was part of it in some points, and it's still amazing to me that this happened, because that was quite a run of a day, and so walk us through it.
Well, even before that, right?
Well-
Because originally the film was set in like San Francisco, and then we'd heard
Mhm.
it might snow on the shooting day, and we knew we had a prison, and we're just like, if it snows, it never says like, what are we gonna do? So last minute before we printed the sign for the prison, we changed it to Chicago, and like, thank God we fucking did, to be honest, because I don't even know what we would have
Mhm.
done anyway. So
I mean, I think even like to back up before that, like when you think about that ending scene, I know when we were discussing what we wanted it to look like, and you'd asked me at one point, you were like, in your perfect world of the film, what would it look like? And I was like, "Ugh, I don't even want to say it, but I picture snow. Like, and you were like, yeah, 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 same. And we were like, we're not gonna get that. It's Vancouver, we'll settle for rain. And then that day it started snowing. I just remember standing outside in Gastown, which was a whole other story of why we were standing outside to begin with. And we just looked at each other and we were like, it's snowing. Will it hold?
Yeah.
Will it hold turned into people abandoning their cars in downtown Vancouver, us trying to trek people across the way to this empty lot with like feet of snow that shut down the city for days after.
Oh, it held.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
that-
that day, that whole day, somebody start with like the beginning, the very beginning of that
Oh, right.
gas town.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
for
so
starters, that was a three
Yeah.
location day. Just to be clear, three separate locations. So
Yeah.
we already had three company moves. So that's like already ambitious and
Yeah.
ridiculous. And then we get into, I mean, someone else wants to tell it, but we get into the first location, and then what happens? Someone
Oh yeah, so we get to the first location, and I think the club owner had arranged for the lighting guy to come, like say our time was at 8. He was, over an hour late because I guess from clubbing, working at the club or something, or he slept in, and so we're just standing outside there, and then we start to see flakes coming down, light flaking. So we're like, okay, it can't be that bad. And then he finally arrives, but this wasn't the same lighting guy. He didn't know how to operate the lights. So the whole lighting scheme was totally messed up. And then we finally, like, between Nat and I, we figured out how to work the DJ lights. And then, but the DP was flustered. Everyone's like running around, and
And it
because
was
we were
like our
trying to
day
make
with
up
the
for lost.
most background too.
Yeah, we
Well-
had invited all our friends waiting
Oh,
outside, and
Right.
yeah, and
I
everyone's all
forgot-
everyone's yeah,
dude, I forgot that guy
everyone's
was late.
stressed. Yeah, he was late. He was late. That was stressful.
But then the thing was,
and
we visited the club, and
mhm.
our DP wanted to shoot with haze, obviously. And we thought we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
okay to use the smoke machine. But then when the lighting guy
Yeah.
came, he's like, no, you can't use the smoke machine here.
Yeah. Well, it was more they use haze all the time, but it's like probably the cheap stuff, right? And then we had bought like most expensive haze and asked them like, okay, this will not trigger the fire alarm, right? And they said, no, it's legit. It's like mostly water. The first 5 minutes, start the haze after, getting a slow start and getting all set up. The fire alarm went off. And so it was complete pandemonium. And then Lee was pretty stressed out. And Theo Kim, who usually is pretty cool under most situations, was pretty stressed out too.
Oh, I said we lost 90 minutes to that fire alarm because it was a weird
Oh,
thing
yeah,
where
yeah.
the switch to turn it off was not in the building that we were shooting in, and it's a weekend, so we wait for someone to access the building down the street that had anyway.
No, it wasn't even
Yeah.
that. The one guy who had the keys to turn off the fire alarm for the entire block was on a plane in
Yeah.
Toronto, so he wasn't even in the
Yeah.
same province
Yeah.
at the time. And then so we were like trying to get him on the phone. He said,
Yeah.
"Well, I can send another guy, but maybe like
Yeah.
it might not even be here." And it turned out it was like
Oh,
in
yeah.
another place, like blocks away. And so
Yeah.
while we're doing that, the fire, like all of like the fire truck and
Yeah.
everyone's coming into the club, and it's just
Yeah.
going off. And they're like, "Okay, well, we just have to
Yeah.
leave it for a bit." And we're like, "What do we can't record anything."
Yeah.
But we're
Yeah.
running
So you were running out of time, and we have to get to the next club, in Yaletown, because there was going to be some extras waiting at that club. And so the alarm's just going off and off and off, and the fire trucks come, which was already stressful, and then they come in and they're trying to figure out how to turn it off, and it took them quite a while. And then finally I just said to Lee, we'll shoot it Hong Kong style. And he's like, what's Hong Kong style? I said, they don't use microphones. They just do it in post. And so he's like, he stopped for a minute. He thought, I saw it in, work in his brain. He's like, okay, let's go. And then that's when we kind of got going again. But, surprisingly, like the audio, with the refrigerators and stuff like that was bad anyway. So we had to redub it after the alarm turned off.
I want to say too, like, and I do talk about this. Like, I will be the first to admit I lost my cool that day, and that was very uncool. That was very fucking uncool. But and I did apologize to everyone as soon as I did raise my voice. But like in a weird way, I'm glad that day happened because, yeah, I lost my cool and I yelled at everyone, and then I immediately regretted it. And like ever since, I always think back to that moment, and I'm like, everyone's out here just trying to do their best. It's no one's fault. It's so unfair and uncool and unacceptable for me to get angry. And it's always been a really good touch point for me to just be like, I will never fucking do that again. And
I think it was still fun and people understood.
Yeah.
yeah, but it doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't matter. It was not cool. It was not cool to raise my voice because it's no one's fault. It was very uncool. And I appreciated everyone else's patience. Like, like so much was going down, but like everyone on this call was super cool and professional and kept it together. And so, yeah.
Thank you for saying that. But if it's any consolation, I actually don't remember that happening.
Me neither.
I was gonna
I
say,
remember
I
they yelled.
remember
don't.
you yelling at anybody. Like,
Me too.
or maybe you did, but it was not so much like at anybody in particular. Like it was just like out of frustration.
Mhm.
But yeah, if it's any consolation, I don't remember a single thing about that.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I just remember
Well-
it was like a disaster. It was like just it was a hilarious disaster that we all were a part of. Like we were like,
Yeah.
they're just being like, hey, what do we do? How can we fix this? And like, what can we do right now?
Yeah.
And then just being like, all right, let's go. Let's just fucking shoot it. Let's just fucking shoot it live.
I feel
Yeah.
like I always look back on this experience as a reminder that I actually don't mind working on shit shows as long as it's like a joint effort from everyone that we're in this together versus like a shit show where everyone's upset at each other or trying to bring people down. Like this is always a fun reminder of like, no, it can be fun. Like I actually don't mind it and really enjoy it when I'm with a good group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like-
exactly.
Because we're all in the trenches together then.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's a bonding experience. I never forget it.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think it's like definitely not cool to lose your cool in front of everybody, but I think what was appreciated by a lot of us was that you stayed. I've been in shoots where things like this happen and then the director just walks off and says, just call me when this is sorted.
Yeah,
Or-
if someone loses it at the sound guy and you're like, well, fuck, like, or like the poor lighting guy, and it has nothing to do with anybody.
Yeah.
This is a day that I actually look back on with a lot of nostalgia.
Nah, well.
Yeah, because of being in the trenches with everyone. Like it was crazy, it was a disaster, but we laughed through it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's key because that shit happens. Worse things happen on other sets, and people, or actually, no, I'm gonna say like less serious things happen on other sets. Like Phoebe's lost her nail, her one nail, and everybody just war breaks out. Yeah, it's just again, like Iya said, it's a testament to like when you work with good people and you know that it's nobody's fault and this is a team and we're just trying to get to the end of the day and like make the thing that we set out to make, then yeah, I really liked that day despite all the like a snow day. I look out there on a snow day and I'm like, there was one day that I look back on very fondly.
Yeah.
I mean,
remember-
of all the days, I think we were lucky that it was our last day when we were shooting our first two scenes, interior locations. So that one final one that we had, dreamed of having snow in was the scene that we had full snow in.
True.
So it did feel different because it was that flashback and it felt completely different than the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First location of the day, all hell breaks loose. Fire
Which
alarm
was
goes
that,
off.
and that was the location that Phil said that we lost. So that was already happened.
Yeah. For me, it was a great bonding memory. That's how Angel and I bonded, because I remember me and Colin were trying to shove clothes into the fire alarm to try to suppress the sounds. It wouldn't be as loud as everybody. So it was like
It
4
didn't work.
jackets worth. Yeah, it was still loud. And then we ended up, I think it was me and Dana and Colin were just running around the place, unlocking doors to try to find this button anyway. So it was a good experience, given everything. But that was the first
I was
location.
excited when the fire department finally showed up. I was like, photos.
Yeah.
There's nothing to take photos of. Just
Like-
people freaking out.
90% of our stills suddenly are of the firemen for no
Yeah,
reason.
these hot firemen. Yeah.
Yeah, they show up and I'm like, oh, boys.
Hey, check out my
Yeah.
tattoo.
Yeah, check out.
Yeah, oh, boys.
The Crazy Eights team came and they started taking video of us going through all this chaos. It was like, guys, oh my god.
Yeah, they were loving it. They were loving it.
Yeah, they were like, this is amazing.
So after this, the snow starts coming in, if I remember correctly, and there are still 2 more company moves in this day. Does anyone remember or can walk us through the rest of it too? Because I think the snow got crazier. That's how Angel raised her hand.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, Angel, you go first.
I think it was from Gastown going to Yaletown. It took over an hour to get there. It's like not that far geographically. It's maybe like a kilometer. But
Yeah.
I don't even remember whose car I jumped into. I was like, it's snowing, I'm not driving. So to this day, I don't know who was driving, but I was in the back of the car.
No,
But
we
I-
started carpooling
Yeah.
with whoever's cars were the safest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Whoever had snow
me,
tires.
I had a team of 4. While all the chaos was going on, the other people, like Hiro, had landed already at the second location, and I had to youngify him. So me and Allison jumped in. I left Kat and Gabby to finish. I think they were working on Daryl, and then I left them to finish and to watch set. And then me and Allison jumped ahead, so we were ahead of everyone because we had to still process Hiro and whoever else was in the second location. So I don't even know what was like when we left. I don't even know what happened. Like I missed most of it, and we were at the second location getting everyone ready there. And it took us some time. And she did not have snow tires. That was fun. It's like,
Yeah, so the snow progressively got worse throughout the day, if I remember correctly. And
Yeah, by
The
the
site-
time,
Yeah.
yeah, once we finished shooting
Yeah.
at the bar in Yaletown, we came out and it was covered. I remember like we knew we had to get all the way to like the outskirts of Chinatown there. And I remember calling someone to switch cars and I said, you need to take my car now or it's gonna get stuck downtown and I need an SUV. And so I had someone come switch cars with me, and then I know like Lee and a bunch of other people piled into my car, and as we were driving to the third location, we were seeing people with cars like in the middle of the road that they just abandoned halfway through, like in the street, and they were like, there was an Evo, and it's like the doors were left open, like apocalyptic times, like somehow they'd just been being like it was chaos. Vancouver is normally chaos in rain and snow, but that was the like full apocalypse.
at that point, the sun was setting too, so we were approaching night. Everything was getting colder. Was there a moment where you and Phil kind of thought, can we even make this day? And how did you end up? What were the things that made you decide to?
I can't speak for Phil, but I was like, we're making this. We are so close to the finish line. I'm like, we're going to do it safely. We're going to make sure everyone is fine. If we have to adjust and adapt, like I know we'd wanted some lights on top of the building in the background of that third location. And I was like, no one's going up there. Like, we're not putting a guy up in the ladder carrying a light in the snow. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'll shut this down before that happens. But I was like, we're going to get what we came for, and we'll do the best that we can. And again, we're all in the trenches together. We're problem solving. We're figuring out how can we still make this the best version of it.
Yeah, and the setups were not easy. Like if you look at especially the ending shot, um, like that's like a 40-foot Fisher Dolly push-in, oneer into basically pushing into the gun, right?
Yeah, and then it
And
wraps around and comes into
wraps
the
around,
slow
so
version.
they're not easy setups. So luckily I don't know why we did this, but we gave the DP like lots of toys to play with. So like we had a balloon light, we had like a Russian crane on top of a Mercedes car, and but those actually in some ways, I guess kind of aiming bigger than what we had done the year before kind of helped us in production. Like just having that balloon light, it simplified things. We were gonna get it no matter what. It would just was just making sure everyone could get there safely or felt comfortable. I was driving a truck, so at one point we were unloading the truck, and the truck was covered with snow on the inside
Oh,
because it takes
okay.
takes so long to unload. The snow had covered all the stuff inside. So by the time we started shooting, I think it had stopped snowing. It was just like a layer.
Yeah.
And then yeah, so it made it a lot easier. But I remember Katrina, our friend, was helping out, and she was like, thank God she's like a former race car driver or something. Is that correctly?
Yeah, she does
She's a
autocross.
former.
She
She's
did autocross,
Yeah,
rather.
she used to do autocross and drifting because like not afraid to drive in the snow.
She's just a
So
badass.
yeah, and
Mhm.
she was driving all over town for us, right? Like picking this up, getting that, and but
Real quick,
yeah, I
she's
think in
got
the
Phoebe's outfit on the first day of shooting because for some reason we didn't have
oh
that.
yeah,
Which one, sorry?
yes,
She picked up Phoebe's outfit that first day of shooting when we were at the house, and we
on
were
the
like,
day of
"We'll film
shooting,
this
yeah.
in about a couple of hours," and she was at the mall just
So,
texting me photos.
Oh, nice.
yeah,
That's awesome.
That was a good find.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
great find.
Is that the
Yeah.
red
Good
dress?
find.
Trust Cat
Yeah.
to find
Wow.
clothes
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, like I think, the one thing like as a like my philosophy has kind of become, especially from Crazy Eights, is like if you're doing an indie film, a lot of times you can't pay people, which is trash. Like, I've been on the on end too of working for free a lot. And there's a certain point where like even though we're friends where it feels a little bit like unfair and exploitative. But I think something you can do if you're an indie filmmaker coming up is like if you can't pay people, then I think you give people chances at either things they haven't got to do, or like, like if you have a friend who like has never got to be the head of the makeup department but does a little bit of makeup, then if you can offer them something like that they can actually learn, like, I'm not saying it's like a whatever, but like, yeah, you'd never done tattoo applications, right? So at least
Yeah.
theoretically you're getting to practice that skill, or like, and I know like on that last day when we're trying to get that oneer, that was really hard and it's snowing and it had been a long, brutal day. We'd gone overtime and it did suck because no one wants to go overtime and it's cold and it's shitty and we've already had a bad day. But I think we were lucky in that people were excited to get a challenging shot. And it was something they hadn't had a chance to do before. So like there was a little bit of like, even though this is awful, I want to do it. And I think that's, if you're an indie filmmaker, something you can think about. Again, not in an exploitative way, but like if you're going to bring people on, try to like bring people on and give them chances to do things they haven't got to do otherwise, or to like give them a reason to actually want to be there and be invested in the project. So it's not just, free labor and awful.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember for me, that was one of the first films I did. And I came in just as a set dresser, like just, or even just an extra hand to help out and whatever. But then Iya was working on it and I just figured I'd tag along. And I don't think I could remember any time where I even thought we were going overtime. And I think even now having reflected, it was kind of cool to feel like it didn't feel like a long day. Even this whole crazy day of snow and fire alarms and people showing up late and all these things, and it didn't seem as stressful as other shoots I probably have been in. And I think looking back into it, and even as I was preparing for this, the one thing that really came out was just the leadership that came behind all of it. Just the fact that Brittany was there and Phil were there, and both of you were producers, and you were on set making sure everyone was okay, through hell or high water, you're going to drive people or whatever if you can. Even Brittany finding a better car for everybody. Like being able to see that you three, Lee, Brittany, and Phil, were able to lead by example, I think, is one other thing that you don't often see in the indie scene, and it's something that I think can make crew members like me, when I was there, feel just even extra supported in that way.
You set a pretty high bar for you, hey Mick?
Yeah.
Like a really great first impression. You're like, oh, all sets are gonna be like this.
Oh, it sure was. And
Oh
then,
man. That was one of my first jobs too. Like I had just done Broil, and then like I had maybe like a one-liner before that on like a Hallmark. But like in terms of like working in indie, I think that was one of my first. I mean, Lee, you put me in your first little like 1 minute.
Thanks for doing
do.
that.
Yeah, that was definitely like first. And then this would have been like third or something like that.
Shit.
But yeah, it was just really, that also set a high bar for me. And also coming off of working on another like indie thing that was crazy, I was like, this is what it's like to work with friends and have fun
Yeah.
and just like stick it out through hell. Like I said, like hell or high water. Yeah,
Well,
it was
I'm
such a
glad.
good. It was that was a good first year for me.
Sweet. I'm glad. I'm very glad.
so for you, as a director, Lee, did you feel that going through this? I know you were also very stressed through the whole thing. Did you feel like you were setting a high bar? I guess the question more for you, Brittany, Phil, and Lee. Did you feel like you were setting a high bar for the developing that kind of morale or environment for the film crew?
I mean, I'm very stressed because it's the thing of like, again, like directors and actors and stuff get so much of the glory, right? Like it's, oh, this is my film, and then it's just like the reality is, again, like 100 odd people have agreed to come out and be on set with you for 12 hours, and that's just the production, let alone like the pre-production stuff. So like there's a responsibility, and you're not paying them because it's Crazy Eights, and they only give you like $1,000, which doesn't even pay for Crafty for one day. And it's so like there's a lot of responsibility. You have dragged everyone out here. You better make it worth their time, and you better do what you can to make it as worthwhile as possible. So, I always felt that. But in terms of a high bar, again, like the sad reality is the bar is actually so low, because I know we've all been on sets where you're treated like shit and the experience is shit and everything's just awful. So like sometimes just trying to make sure people are fed and not being exploited and abused. We talk about high bars, like that should be the floor. And again, like I said, I lost it on the Sunday, which is unacceptable. So I didn't even do what I set out to do. So
I think you did.
Yeah, I think Lee's like definitely like a good collaborator and like very mindful of the people around him. For myself, it's like because we had worked on several projects together, where I was coming from, and like just giving people the tools they need to express themselves and then also push themselves a little, and pushing myself a little more and pushing everyone else creatively and also technically. And also like we were representing like the Asian team, one of the Asian teams that year. So especially, I can say we had, quite a lot of heads of department that were, say, Filipino Canadian or, Filipino. So that was like unique for me. I think Lee was really receptive. Like he would often ask, like, it's like, so how much do you think we're gonna go? Like this much? I'm not sure. As long as it's like supporting the team, and I can say, personally myself, I did put some money into it, but it was always things that I felt like if the team needed more crew or needed certain types of equipment, we'd try to find the best deal to support them, try to find sponsors, and they feel more comfortable even if it's a long day. So in that, I can say it's like one of the legendary projects of, our little cinematic universe. But I can say like, with all honesty, like some of the people, that was like got them into the industry, or they met people at these certain types of projects, or became passionate about these type of projects. So I'm proud of that. And I think, I thank Lee and the rest of the team for kind of supporting that.
I think that's such a valuable thing about our little Asian indie community is the fact that we all really look after each other on set. And so I think for me, and I guess Mick too, it's like when you come into something like this fresh, you learn a lot by watching how other people work. And I learned etiquette, what we get to do on set, what we don't get to do, where, like, as an actor, where my freedoms are. Like at that point, I was still learning what I can and can't do, like how far I can go and what, like where my freedom is within the, like in the camera or on set, and like the responsibilities you have as an actor and like as a producer, like all these different roles. And I think like that bore a really good environment to learn by example.
And I guess to transition, we're gonna start wrapping things up a little bit here. Since Parabola, which has been, gosh, I guess 4 years now.
No,
Jesus.
5.
Yeah, almost 5. What
Oh
have
wait,
We
no, sorry, 4,
started-
2019.
we started, early prep in 2018.
Yeah, what have we've clearly obviously grown in our careers. What are some highlights that each of you have had since then?
I think
Career-wise.
this is the highlight.
Damn.
Shooting with friends is different than going to work every day. Shooting something that you don't really care about. For me, yeah, this was a highlight.
And
Aw.
Angel made her first film recently too.
Yeah. And it looks gorgeous, by the way. I saw some pictures. It looks really good.
It's true.
Thank you.
How about you,
Anybody else
Iya?
have highlights?
Oh, highlights. Funnily enough, after this, not really a highlight, just a funny synchronicity, whatever. Every other set I've been on, I've had to do tattoos. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, I feel like now with all the knowledge I've accumulated, if we were ever to do whatever again, I now am armed with more workings and more better ways of doing things. But yeah, I think like Angel, I often look back and think that it's a hard one to top. And I feel like because I think maybe 3 years ago I stopped doing smaller projects and just focused on union work. And I haven't really gone back. And I will say I would only go back for you guys. Yeah.
Well,
Phoebe?
yeah, if you want to go back for like a day and just practice doing these arms on me, like, more than welcome to.
I think once Mick buys that laser printer, then yes, we can
I'm
go
coming
down.
over.
Yeah, we'll have
There.
we'll have a tattoo party.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, Phoebe, how about you? What have you been working on since then?
Classic life of an actor. It's a roller coaster, right? There are ups and downs. But obviously I've been blessed to work with Phil again and again after that. And we've made some cool stuff over the years. I will say that Parabola, like that time was such a highlight in my career, because I was just like, things were just starting to happen. And it was really, that was the first time I ever felt this wave of, like opportunities. Cause I had just done this like indie feature Broil. And then like a couple weeks after that or maybe I think like a week after we wrapped, we did Parabola. And then like right in the middle of Parabola, I booked this other MOW and I got to be on that for like 12 days or something crazy. And that was the first time and I cherish that so much, because how often, Lee, that's like, how often do we know that there's something coming up next?
Yeah.
Like, it's so rare. And so that was such a cool wave where I was like, wow, is this going to be the rest of my life?
No.
Look, you're fucking laughing now. But
you've done a lot of cool shit since. Yeah.
Thank you. Like, I've definitely gotten very lucky, and I've hit little waves again after that, which was really cool. And like, again, it's like I just take it's stuff that I've learned from working on that, and then working with Phil, and like working on the little things after that, like you just build up. But that time was such a core memory for me in terms of like what it meant for me, and like, yeah, in showing me what was possible. And
Awesome.
yeah. very cool. Very cool stuff. And now I just yeah, I would love to, you inspire me, Lee. I want to like make my own stuff eventually.
Aw.
Yay.
Oh, you should. I hope you do.
I really
She
want
she just sent me pictures of her crafting, so I was impressed.
to. Phil,
Yeah.
help me.
Phil, how
I
about
will
you?
say, credits to Phil. Crafty is not easy. Take it
Mm.
away.
I mean, I'm still the indie guy, you know, but you know, I've had some pretty interesting experiences, and then now just kind of transitioning out of producing, or at least producing for other people. So more mentoring and, you know, mentoring for Crazy Eights or VAF or judging or like some really fun stuff. But a lot of it comes out of like, say, Parabola in terms of like, because people know that project, I think. So, you know, people think it's legendary and like, whoa, you worked on that. So it definitely, for me, it was like, you know, a real anchor point, especially also for like the Asian Canadian community, in my opinion. So I always say this, like when I went to the first Crusades, there were no Asians on screen, off screen, on stage at the event. So it was like I was like, we're gonna be on that stage one day. So we got to do it, and so I think it's definitely like and I met E at the VAF. He was interviewing me. I said, "Oh, that guy has a cool accent," you know. And then we worked together on, you know, many other projects. He introduced me to Mayumi and many other actors, like Samantha Hum and stuff. And actually Phoebe, uh, I saw her. I'd met her at some uh, uh, reading VAF reading thing we were all at, and
I
then
don't even. That was the first.
yeah,
time I met.
yeah, I think so. And I was like, oh, she's cool, you know. And
Lee, you were
Lee, you
there.
know, said, yeah, Lee goes, yeah, we should get her. We should get her. She was cool, you know, and she's really good. So it's like all these. I filter a lot of this, and you know, Lee told me about Brittany, and all these things filter back to like I would say Parabola is like the anchor point for peak Planta cinematic universe. So yeah, it's funny. It's really funny for me. Really, I'm really proud of it. So I would do it again in a heartbeat, even with all the craziness.
Brittany,
I forget what the original question was, but I mean, I
what have you worked on since? Because just looking back a little bit from now, between now
Highlight.
and Parabola, yeah.
so I come from like a non-indie world of filmmaking, and Parabola was the one that pulled me back into it. It was such a good experience, and I wouldn't know any of you really if I hadn't done that. And just to like to tag on with everyone, I do think that it's one of the things that I am most proud of. I mean, there's things that you look back on and you're like, oh, I wish we could have done this different. I wish, you know, the alarm hadn't gone off or it hadn't been Snowmageddon that day. There's so many little things, but overall, it was such a great project, and I'm so proud of every single person that we had come out to help. And like everyone really gave it their all. And I think it remains like one of the indie projects I'm most proud of. So I have shown it to a bunch of people that I do work with, and everyone is equally as impressed by it, which has been really nice. So with that said, yeah, I am a producer on a television series called Resident Alien right now. And so that's been my main gig for the last few years. And similarly to Parabola, it's with an amazing group of people. And I think it doesn't matter whether you're doing an indie project or a bigger project, if you're with the right people. I mean, these are people you spend so much of your time with. Like we give up outside lives, we give up time in our relationships, we give up time seeing our family, our friends. And when you're spending this much time with people, it's so important that they become a family. And I think that stays true, whether it's an indie or whether it's a TV series or a big feature. It's just the same thing across the board. And we're all trying to give in and put that same effort and our time and make something that we can be proud of.
And Lee,
I mean, yeah, everyone said it, and I haven't like I've made some shorts since, but they were literally like just in my apartment during quarantine, so I haven't made a short with like everyone, like a big crew or whatever, in a long time, and I miss it. I miss it a lot, and Parabola was the first time I really got to do it, and it it was incredible too. And of course, like Brittany said, there's a lot of things I wish we could go back and change, but overall, it was a phenomenal experience, and I learned a lot. And
Mhm.
I do genuinely hope we all get to do something together again, because you're like some of my favorite people, and I miss you all. But yeah, I just been mainly acting, and like Phoebe said, it's very up and down, but I've got to do some cool things over the years. In particular, I got to work with Mahershala Ali on a feature for Apple, and that was a crazy experience
Was
getting to
incredible. Everybody go watch it.
What is it called?
Swan Song. Yeah, Mahershala is phenomenal in that movie. He's like, he plays two versions of himself and has to act with himself and stuff. And he's like, just his ability to be like the same character, but with like the subtle differences, like such a depth and complexity and nuance. And like, he really is one of the best actors working right now, and the nicest fucking dude. I mean, you guys know this industry is so brutal, and it's so up and down, and it's so funny, like, listen to Phoebe talk to about like the waves and stuff, because even Mahershala, like, he'd be like, well, if I, hopefully I keep working, God willing. And it's like, dude, you like, you have Oscars and stuff, but like, I think what I've learned is no matter what level you're at, the problems generally they're kind of the same. They just slightly change, and
Like
like,
on a different scale.
yeah,
Mm.
right. And no matter where we are, no matter what position, I think you always want to be working more. You always want to be working on cool shit. Like, it just never fucking
Yeah.
goes away.
Never goes away. And
Never
like
goes away.
you just gotta keep trucking. You're like nonstop proving yourself over and over to yourself and then to like everybody else. And it's not easy to like hold your own and do your thing opposite someone like Mahershala. And like I think you crushed it as well.
Oh, thank you. It was a very small part, but thank you.
I
Because I
know, but
was
like still.
terrified. I was not gonna lie, I was terrified. But yeah, like, I don't know. I miss working with friends a lot. Like, I I've done a lot of indies over the past few years, and God, there've been some like genuinely terrible ones.
Let's hope
But
they
it,
don't watch this.
but
I just named them one by one. What is it?
yeah, well, this one is. But like, no, it's like there's something about working on really cool, high budget stuff that's like where the crew is a well-oiled machine and the product's going to be good. That's definitely something very cool. But then there is also something equally cool about making stuff with your friends, where you all just want to be there and all just want to have a good time. That is also a good thing. And I wish we all got to do more of that.
And some really good words from everybody, just especially now as anyone who's listening, we're actually recording this a day after SAG announced a potential end to the strike. So some words of motivation, I think, for
Happy end of strike,
Come
everyone.
in.
that's okay. Okay, so last question. Where can we find you guys in terms of social media or whatnot? And maybe just highlight one thing you're working on currently, creatively. Lee, you want to start?
You can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky at LC Shorten, because I got banned from Twitter.
You mean X? You got that from
Yes, I mean,
X.
sorry, I got banned from X.
You got X from X.
And the latest thing, you can catch me on Blue Eye Samurai, which is a Netflix anime. And I am currently working on a couple of video games, but I can't really talk about those, unfortunately.
Brittany?
Brittany_LC on Instagram. Yeah, watch my show, Resident Alien.
Fail.
Everything for me is at Phil Planta. So all the socials, except for TikTok, I'm at Philip Planta. So you remember that.
Wait, do you make TikToks?
Yes.
I'm gonna start, okay? Next year, I swear.
The dances and
Yeah.
stuff.
Bill's about to go viral.
Yeah, totally.
I would dare.
But yeah, everything's online somewhere. But yeah, just IMDb, whatever. But yeah, and then just Hollow. Obviously, I've been helping Mick a little bit, so we're trying to get one of the things we're trying to get a lot of more Filipino creators going. So last year and a bit, we worked on about 12 short films with Filipino creators and mostly Filipino cast. So that's something unique. We'll be the Wong Fu of Canada soon, one day.
Cool. Phoebe.
Don't forget about your honorary Filipina.
Yes,
Yes, you are.
never
Your
forget.
Tagalog's really better than mine.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm on Instagram as at Phoebe Miu. Right now I am trying my hand at producing. Catch me in my next project. Actually, no, I'll talk about it. It's a New Diamond film, and it's a really beautiful family-oriented zombie movie, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot as I'm going, and yeah, I'm excited to share more soon.
Yep.
Sick.
You can find me on Instagram at Iya Yujuico. Have fun trying to spell that. The last thing I have posted there is Parabola. Actually, I haven't posted anything since. We're working on, well, the show I did work on is finally coming out next year, February 2024, which was Shogun. And I was part of the BG crew. So we did all the BG samurai, basically.
Sick. Sick.
Yeah.
Angel.
Oh, I'm on Instagram as Map Child. Map as in like a treasure map. Am I the only one that doesn't use my name? Yep. And the thing that I did, still the most recent show that I did was Ink Master, season 15. It's on Paramount Plus.
Good watch. Cool. So thanks everyone for joining in our interview for the flavor of the month. For any of our listeners, if you have any questions you want to ask the filmmakers, leave them a comment on the video or send them a message at Instagram. Their handles are going to show up in the video here. If you want to nominate a film for flavor of the month, you could always just send us a message at Instagram at wearehalo. Halo is HALO. You can watch Parabola in our new YouTube channel, We Are Halo. We put Lee's film there in the playlist, and it will be under the flavor of the month playlist. So I'm Mick. Thanks for listening in to the December edition of Flavor of the Month by Halo Production. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Strike, everyone.